Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Imperial Beach has been plagued with foul, filthy, stinky air, and now there's a letter campaign to declare an emergency. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen went to the South Bay talking to residents who are asking for help to stop the stink.
This week is the first time that surfers and boogie boarders can safely enjoy the water in Imperial Beach. That's because a pump came back online, diverting the raw sewage away from the beaches here. But puddles of raw sewage remain in the Tijuana River Valley.
And sort of do the stink test, you know, can I breathe today? Can I go?
Marvel Harrison came to Imperial Beach 5 years ago to retire with her husband. She says the putrid air is making her sick.
There's always been waves of stench, but the hydrogen sulfide that's now being measured is really difficult. I've ended up with a low-grade infection that allows my lungs not to function properly.
Earlier this month, researchers from UC San Diego and San Diego State raised the alarm about the high levels of the toxic gas hydrogen sulfide. It's a main component of sewer gas. County officials, however, say the air is safe to breathe. Imperial Beach Mayor Paloma Aguirre disputes that.
People have been reporting watery eyes, throat irritation, lung inflammation, coughs, sinusitis, migraines, which I personally have been suffering of chronic ones now for the better part of this last year. So it's extremely concerning.
She recently sent a letter to the White House renewing her request for an emergency declaration to address the ongoing sewage crisis. Like the sign says, stop the stink. That's what residents here are demanding because it's affecting their quality of life. The county has declared a public health emergency, but County Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer wants to do more. She's asking 4 North County cities, Del Mar, Encinitas, Solana Beach, and Carlsbad, to help buy air filters for IB residents.
I was actually contacted by one of the cities in my district, in District 3, that just stepped up and said, we'd love to help. That was Solana Beach. And they said, that they'd been talking to the other mayors, and maybe I could help organize everyone to do a little something.
Lawson-Remer says her office will match any money raised through a county grant. But Harrison says the need goes beyond air filters.
We need a state of emergency. I can't emphasize that enough.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Imperial Beach Mayor Paloma Aguirre is not the only one writing to President Biden about the ongoing sewage crisis. For the last 2 weeks, second graders at San Global Vision Academy have been learning about the Tijuana River pollution in class, and they told our media partner KGTV that they wanted to do something, so they wrote their own letters to the president asking him to fix it.
Dear President Joe Biden, we have a problem. Imperial Beach is very dirty.
We need you to save the ocean. The pipes in Mexico have broken down. Now the sewage is pouring into our ocean.
We really need you and the President of Mexico to work together. So can you please do it for our community? It is a state of emergency.
Mayor Aguirre says an emergency declaration would allow for immediate public health measures, including air filtration systems for households, as well as real-time air and water quality monitoring.
If you managed to stay by the coast, you've been a bit more comfortable, especially with some of those low clouds through the overnight into the morning hours. But there's still a lot of heat elsewhere across our area. I'll be breaking down if there will be any changes to that pattern coming up.
Tropical depression Helene continues to spin north. At least 25 are being blamed on the former Cat 4 hurricane. Right now, millions are without power, and huge parts of southeast are grappling with life-threatening floods. Michael Yoshida has the latest.
This is still a very dangerous situation. Even though some of the storm surge is receding in Florida.
Boats on yards in front of homes, roofs torn off, trees toppled, vehicles crushed. Many Floridians are assessing Helene's punishing overnight blow while the threat moved north.
There's still so much that's happening across many states.
Potentially historic and devastating flood levels are washing across large parts of the southeast.
We're also trying to get to multiple structures right now that we know have individuals inside that we're unable to communicate with.
Georgia's governor confirming Friday afternoon that multiple people remain trapped in buildings. Water rescues in that state and others have essentially been nonstop since Helene's landfall. In North Carolina, forecasters predict Helene's impact to be one of the most significant weather events to happen in the modern era for the region. At least 2 storm-related fatalities have happened there. Around mountainous Asheville, already saturated from pre-Helene rains, there are other threats.
I am worried about potential building falling and collapses and landslides.
The river just keeps coming up. I don't know when it's supposed to crest today, but it's...
Trees are down on roads everywhere. Don't get out if you don't have to.
Good advice echoed by just about every emergency management official.
You need to exercise extreme caution.
In Steinhatchee, Florida, Michael Yoshida, KPBS News.
The San Diego Fire Department is sending more than 200 personnel to assist with search and rescue efforts in the wake of Tropical Storm Helene. 46 members of FEMA Urban Search and Rescue California Task Force were deployed. Task Force 8, were deployed to North Carolina today, and the team has not yet been given the name of the city that they will deploy to. They are traveling in semi-trucks, vans, and SUVs. Our media partner KGTV also reports that Falck is expected to deploy paramedics and EMTs from San Diego County to Florida for up to 14 days. Vice President Kamala Harris is trying to boost her credibility on a campaign weak point her opponent, former President Donald Trump, has been capitalizing on, which is immigration. She visited the southern border in Arizona today. Our Washington correspondent Julia Benbrook has details from the White House.
Former President Donald Trump has made immigration a central issue during each of his presidential campaigns. Polling shows that voters prefer Trump over Vice President Kamala Harris when it comes to handling border security. But Harris is trying to flip the script on Republicans, and this visit is a part of those efforts. Vice President Kamala Harris traveling to the southern border on Friday, expected to go on the offensive against former President Donald Trump on the topic of immigration, by leaning into her previous work as Attorney General and a senator of a border state, and slamming Trump for scuttling the bipartisan border deal.
As president, I will bring back the border security bill that Donald Trump killed, and I will sign it into law.
Her visit is a part of an attempt to close the significant polling gap with Trump on this topic. A recent survey shows voters prefer the Republican nominee when it comes to handling immigration.
They do like some of what Trump says about the need to be tougher on immigration. They don't like, especially moderate voters, swing voters who are going to be determinative in this election. They don't like the hateful language. They don't like the sense of chaos that Trump brings.
Trump has criticized Harris for not visiting the southern border in several years and has made border security a central issue during each of his presidential campaigns.
Why would she go to the border now, playing right into the hand of her opponent?
While Democrats have grappled with years of border crises, the Harris campaign sees an opportunity. Right now, border crossings are the lowest they've been since 2020. Advisors to the vice president remain concerned about the gap between the two candidates on immigration, but they also cite polling that shows Trump's lead on the issue eroding since Harris took over at the top of the Democratic ticket. Reporting at the White House, I'm Julia Benbrook.
California voters will decide in November whether to give cities and counties more power to limit rent increases. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson looked into the support and opposition to the ballot measure.
California limits rent increases to 10% a year for tenants living in apartments built before 1995. But a law known as Costa-Hawkins prevents cities and counties from passing further rent control, like for newer buildings, single-family homes, or new tenants. The Justice for Renters Act, Proposition 33, would repeal that law, allowing cities and counties to control rents for any housing. Jose Lopez is a community organizer in San Diego. He supports Prop 33.
This matters a whole lot, especially for the thousands of Californians who are really one rent increase away from having to move out of their homes.
Typical monthly rent for a California apartment has risen about $500 over the last 7 years. In San Diego, it's more than $2,600. And homelessness is increasing, despite more being spent to address it. Lopez is advocating for families like his own.
We eventually became an organizer, and I couldn't believe that they actually would pay me to go and talk to people about the things that most people told me to just be quiet about.
He had been paying a little over $2,100 in monthly rent. After a leaky sink flooded their house, he says the landlord evicted them, remodeled, and raised the rent. He now pays almost $3,800 to live a couple blocks away.
Because I had to invite my brother to come in and live with us to help pay part of the rent. And then besides that, just making sacrifices, like cutting expenses.
Lopez and other supporters are up against a long list of local leaders who oppose Proposition 33, including San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria and the mayors of Carlsbad, Chula Vista, and Temecula, and Senator Tony Atkins. Apartment and realtor associations have donated more than $67 million to fight the measure. Lucinda Lilly recently served as president of the Southern California Rental Housing Association.
Our industry as a whole find it sad that it's us versus them. It's not the way we see it. We'd love to get together and work out solutions rather than just get hammered every time somebody comes up with an idea that says, you own rental housing, therefore you're really rich, therefore you're a bad person, therefore I'm gonna screw you over.
She says rent increases are necessary to cover repairs. Most housing in the city of San Diego is more than 30 years old. She says California over-regulates rental housing already, and it's driving landlords out of the market. More rent control would make that worse, she says, and discourage developers from building new housing. Instead, she would like to see local governments offer more rental assistance.
A lot of times, it's a matter of my car broke down, I can't afford to pay my rent. I just need a short-term loan to get me through the next month, right?
A few years ago, researchers analyzed more than a dozen studies on the impacts of rent control. They found it does work to keep rent lower and increase housing stability for current tenants. They say there's not much evidence that it reduces new construction or housing quality, but it does tend to reduce the total number of rental units as owners take them off the market. Ricardo Flores leads a nonprofit that advocates for affordable housing. He says rent control isn't a perfect solution, but it's necessary.
You've got to stop the crisis and then think about where to go from here.
And he thinks it has to be done with changes to zoning.
We don't really have the luxury to say, well, let's do one or let's do the other. People continue to have to make decisions about food, medicine, or rent.
Single-family only zoning takes up more than 80% of San Diego's residential land. Flores argues that has to change for enough affordable housing to be built. San Diego has a housing crisis, but he says it's a solvable one.
This is not putting a man on Mars or a woman on Mars.
I'll moderate a panel at PolitiFest tomorrow where you can hear Lilly and others debate this measure and inform your vote. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
One of the oldest environmental organizations in the country is suing Imperial County's water agency. Imperial Valley reporter Corey Suzuki says the Sierra Club is worried a new water conservation deal will speed up the release of toxic dust from the Salton Sea.
The new deal is between Imperial County's powerful water agency, IID, and the Federal Bureau of Reclamation. The agreement was signed in mid-August and would significantly reduce the amount of water that IID uses from the Colorado River for 3 years. That's good news for everyone who depends on the Colorado, which has struggled because of climate change, drought, and intense water use. But the Sierra Club says IID didn't do enough to acknowledge the impact the deal could have on communities around the Salton Sea, which is slowly drying up.
So when you cut off 900,000 acre feet of water, that's a lot of water that could have flowed into the Salton Sea.
Richard Miller is the director of the Sierra Club's San Diego chapter. He says the loss of that water will speed up the release of toxic dust into the air and put people who live near the lake in greater danger of breathing it in.
They need to have an environmental impact report that will show that there is a need to mitigate some of these environmental catastrophes, basically, that's going to hit.
The group wants IID to commit more resources to restoring the Salton Sea. Officials with IID say they're already doing some restoration work. Tina Shields oversees the agency's water department.
We share concerns of keeping our community safe, but we also know that we have one supply of water from the Colorado River, and if the river fails, the Salton Sea will get zero inflow.
Shields says that risk is something IID is taking seriously. Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
The Metropolitan Transit System's new copper line opens on Sunday. KPBS reporter Katie Anastas says officials hope it will make East County trips faster and more reliable and help prevent delays across the trolley network.
3, 2, 1.
The copper line will serve 4 stations from El Cajon to Santee. It replaces the green and orange line service north of the El Cajon Transit Center. The change requires passengers to transfer to the copper line, but officials say it will help prevent delays across the entire trolley network. That's because currently green and orange line trolleys have to wait for access to a single track.
When you had 2 trains here at the El Cajon Transit Center wanting to go up towards Santee, they ended up having to wait for each other on that single track. Because of that, some of those trains got delayed, and that delay rippled all the way down to downtown and elsewhere on the system.
Starting Sunday, the green and orange lines will end at the El Cajon Transit Center. For riders continuing north, MTS says the copper line will run every 15 minutes for most of the day.
What we've done right here is going to improve reliability and dependability for every rider across the system in San Diego County, and that's one way that we are going to encourage more people to take transit and improve ridership system-wide.
East County leaders hope increased ridership leads to more economic activity in the area and less car traffic. They say nearly 5,000 people use the El Cajon Transit Center each day.
It's important to also point out that MTS will save $1 million a year in operating costs that can be used to increase frequency and better security, and hopefully in East County.
MTS says putting the 3rd track at the El Cajon Transit Center cost about $14 million. About half of it was covered by state grant money. Copper line service starts Sunday at 5 a.m. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
Cases of pertussis, or whooping cough, are on the rise and seem to be higher this year than what we saw at this time last year. Mandy Gaither has what to know about whooping cough and how to protect yourself and your loved ones.
Cases of whooping cough are surging in the U.S., 5 times higher than they were at the same point last year, according to preliminary data from the CDC.
And that's even before we really enter respiratory virus season, where, I think that we're going to see even more cases as we go forward.
Dr. Donald Dumford with Cleveland Clinic says years ago, before the development of a vaccine, there were many more whooping cough cases. This year's number of cases is more in line with pre-pandemic levels. But for those most vulnerable, like young children and the elderly, that's concerning.
About a third of infants will get hospitalized, and actually about 1% of infants that develop whooping cough will actually die from the infection.
The CDC says early symptoms can mimic a common cold. 1 to 2 weeks after those start, there can be rapid, violent, and uncontrolled coughing fits that can make it hard for a person to breathe and can last up to 10 weeks.
They can kind of get blue in the face, and then there's a very sharp intake of air that kind of causes this whoop.
Dumford says the best protection against whooping cough is vaccination. It's typically given to young children, but he says it's recommended for adults who haven't received it too, along with boosters. And it's especially important for those who are pregnant.
Remember that infants very highly rely on their mothers for their immune system over those first 6 months of life.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
The federal government is handing out free COVID-19 tests again. You can now order tests from covidtests.gov, They will be shipped starting next week, and each household is eligible to get 4 at-home test kits. The Department of Health and Human Services says they've handed out more than 900 million free tests since beginning in 2021. Right now, nearly 100 veterans who served in World War II and the Korean War and the Vietnam War are enjoying a trip to the nation's capital. And it is all courtesy of Honor Flight San Diego. 92 veterans boarded the plane this morning and are expected back on Sunday. The trip provides a chance for them to be recognized for their sacrifice and for their service.
Many of them weren't thanked when they returned from their service. This is our opportunity to show them we have a grateful nation. They appreciate what they did for our country.
And the veterans will arrive back at San Diego International Airport Sunday at 1:15 p.m. This year, Honor Flight partnered with Feeding San Diego. They encourage all who plan to attend their homecoming to bring non-perishable food items that they can then donate for the Feeding Heroes initiative.
As we go through time, we won't see too many significant changes to our pattern, but if you're in a few spots, we will be easing out of some of that heat through the latter part of the weekend, keeping the warm pattern, though, as a whole across our area. Desert communities in a few spots, we'll see those numbers go down beyond Saturday. So Saturday, really tomorrow, the peak of some of that heat that's been around for us, and then we'll ease things off a little bit, though it is still warmer than historical average. Limited marine layer found for us. Some of us have enjoyed it. It's helped keep the coast a little more comfortable. There's not going to be a lot of it around as we head through the upcoming days. And of course, we'll stay mild and dry heading into next week. So there's not significant changes for most of our inland and coastal communities. Here we are as we head through tonight. San Diego, 63 for the low here. Escondido coming in at 54. Mount Laguna, 64 for you. Borrego Springs finding some relief at 75, but of course the day is hot, and that's what we're talking about for some of our desert communities here where we do have that excessive heat warning lasting through Saturday. Let's talk numbers because it's varied depending on where you are. 76 in Chula Vista tomorrow, though, into the city at 75. As you work your way towards Borrego Springs, 111 for the high, and Ramona coming in at 92. So varied depending on where you are and what location you're in. Coastal communities, the comfort remains with us. Really no big changes here as we cruise through the weekend, keeping things fairly tame and seasonable for this time of year in the 70s and lower 80s. Inland communities a little on the warm side, but I think we manage okay. Pretty bright too as we keep that marine layer limited, especially Sunday into Monday. Temperatures then in the mid to upper 80s, and notice we might trend even just a touch warmer as we head into early next week. For the mountain communities, it's more of the same for us as we hold on to the mid 70s. It's actually pretty warm though for Saturday. The heat will really be found in our desert communities. We're at 111 for that high on Saturday. Note though, the numbers drop as we head into Sunday and Monday. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Melissa Constancer.
And here's another look at today's top stories. Part of the Imperial Beach shoreline reopened to swimmers this week, but residents say the air still stinks of raw sewage from the Tijuana River Valley. County Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer is asking the cities of Del Mar, Encinitas, Solana Beach, and Carlsbad to help buy air filters for Imperial Beach residents. She says her office will match any money raised for the filters through a county grant. Imperial County's water agency is being sued over a new deal to reduce its water use from the Colorado River for 3 years. The Colorado has struggled with drought for years, and the Sierra Club says the deal could speed up the release of toxic dust from the Salton Sea into the neighboring communities. The group wants more resources to go toward restoring the Salton Sea. And starting this weekend, MTS says bus and trolley riders in the East County can enjoy some faster trips and some reliable service because it's launching its new copper line, which will run from Santee to El Cajon Sunday at 5 in the morning. The candidates running for San Diego mayor will join KPBS for a live debate on Thursday, October 3rd, and that begins at 8 o'clock p.m. San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria and challenger Larry Turner will debate the most pressing issues that are facing San Diegans, and that includes housing and homelessness, public safety, and money matters. Again, the live debate will be carried on KPBS TV, 89.5 FM, kpbs.org, and of course on YouTube.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, the Southeast reels from the ravages of Hurricane Helene. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Live at the Belly Up, our signature music series airs Friday nights on KPBS, and tonight we premiere the first of 5 new concerts. Here's a sneak peek of tonight's episode featuring a local indie band, Aviator Stash, and their song, Funky Tongue. You can watch live tonight at 11 p.m. or you can stream all of the concerts anytime on the PBS app. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.